Today's message is for those souls who seek to realign during this time of great conjunction, seen and unseen. The I and I was recently communicating with a feminine soul seeking to break the controls of self-centered goals, who reached out to us via social media. This sisterin had read a heartfelt post from one of my mated sons who was expressing honor and respect for his biological sister, who was maintaining her virginity with a strong focus on forming a lifelong commitment of relationship within this divine social economic family community order.
Overstand, said the old bold soul of the oldest old man who walked the land with a stick in his hand. Overstand the nature of who you be as a part of humanity, and then you'll understand the nature that opposes green earth, solar conscious femininity.
The sister who contacted us confessed that while her deepest longing was to move into the direction of whole life change, she had several emotional attachments that were keeping her tied to a state of confusion and doubt. In fact, she said that she was trapped in a world where she did not belong. The soul-to-soul connection that identified her first encounter with us required that the I and I offer eldership, guidance, and protection to this sacred soul. After taking time to hear her situation, the advice of the I and I was, look, listen, learn to discern the nature of energy you are consuming at every turn. One must always remember that there are two different natures of energy. The original nature of our first Genesis is divine order. Then there is that opposing nature of this order that degrades our first Genesis of origin and breeds a toxic reality, a self-deified fallacy. Raising awareness about these two completely different natures of energy that occupy one's consciousness is the only way to stay out of harm's way. There are so many half-truths floating around that one can become confused and easily misled. The bits, pieces, and parts of truth are airborne like a virus, seeking to infect the consciousness of the innocent, the ignorant, and the unaware. Unfortunately, these corrupting influences invade the consciousness, slipping easily into one's thoughts because one agrees with one part or another. While one is agreeing, saying, yes, that's true, the deceptive element is slipping in through the back door of one's subconsciousness, feeding the lower and lesser spaces and places in the mind, clouding one's ability to see clearly and make healthy decisions. For instance, there are many individuals who approach the I and I in an unclear state about very important matters such as spirituality, sexuality, and communal living. There's a lot of talk about freedom. Yes, there's talk about free will and the freedom to freely express one's spiritual and sexual nature. In fact, this freedom is stated as an individualistic right, to the point that some even suggest that individuals should be free to do whatever he or she wants to do, so long as no one is harmed. Sexual freedom turns into freelance sex. Spirituality turns to a personal journey into the higher self. Communal living turns into cult-like rebellions against the status quo. Do what thou will becomes the whole of the law. The I and I humbly advise, look, listen, learn, discern what nature of energy one is consuming at every turn. Many of these so-called freedoms are stunting and repressive against the soul of femininity. She, the first teacher, who by her nature represents the communal presence, we must never forget that her womb is humanity's first classroom. We ask, what about the children? What about the generation next? What about being accountable and responsible and secure, committed, healthy, and wholesome masculine and feminine relationships? Please bear in mind those teachings that were preserved by our ancient Kemetic priesthood, which stated our first Genesis. In the beginning, the most supreme seen and unseen essence of masculine and feminine energy said, "Let us make man in our own image." And man emerged upon the scene divinely unified as he and she, consuming from the fruits of the tree, being fruitful and multiplying this divinity. Any way you want to interpret or translate these sacred teachings, our first Genesis presence was encoded in our DNA millennia before the teachings of self-centered individualism. When referencing those teachings of self-centered individualism, the question arises, what about the family unit at the root, foundation, and base of our emergence within the fathering and mothering principles of whole life energy? And regardless of the level and degrees of genetic mutation and degeneration over time, what about detoxing, purging, and healing into a nature of accountability and responsibility for one's actions, past, present, and forward? One is connected to the sacred ancestral lineages from which one emerged as a divine child of the sun, within the sacred garden culture from which we come, embodying the soulful essence of all that one was born to be in divine order, so as to go forward and multiply that divine order into every offspring and vibration of the generation next, within the supreme circle of life. It has become clear over cycles of time that when one glorifies and worships the individualistic nature of self, all kinds of troubling and divisive attitudes, values, behaviors, and beliefs manifest. These are the tormenting manifestations that have so many individuals now begging and crying for change. What we're saying is that outside of the divine union of masculine and feminine energy, there exists a lower and lesser state of being, an individualistic state governed by the laws of polarity. One may eat the physical foods of raw and living fruits, vegetables, seeds, and nuts as a fueling source of whole life energy, but one's consciousness will still carry the codes of a self-centered toxic nature. And the truth of the matter is, neither he nor she is naturally and innately birthed as an individualistic self. Frankly speaking, we are a collective source of DNA far beyond the present-day imagination of anyone. The female, within her natural and innate biological encode, is a communal being. Get that straight. The womb, the umbilical cord, the breath, states that mother is more than just one, as she is responsible for caring and nurturing our life within her. Equally, it is he who delivers the semen that provides the pathway for the sperm to activate and impregnate she, so as to conceive a new life form, working in conjunction to forward a new cycle of whole life consciousness, seen and unseen. So it is, so it has come to be. Thus, in divine order, we have the divine union of he and she, the universal image of father and mother as the supreme creative parenting source that reproduces the collective communal state of who we be within the essence of life and supreme love. And so where exactly do the individualistic self exist except as a state of consciousness outside of divine order in your mind? In that outside dimension is a cold, lonely, empty place where individuals love company in their misery, or try to escape it in some psychedelic trip to the outskirts of a self-induced hallucination, or the daily momentary distractions of a way of life, a religion, where all is fair in love and war. For those who decide to come out of the cold, the living practice of divine socio-economic family community order is about detoxing, purging, and healing relationships, how one relates to one's own being, to others, and to one's surroundings, based on the natural and innate appeal of vitality, wholesome health, and tender loving care. The appeal of the feel of whole life energy pulsing through one's consciousness, that is the feeling of being alive, vibrant, radiant, and connected to a supreme power source. In reference to the earlier quote regarding sex, the I and I state that the current projections of sex and even sexuality are too limited, too restricted, too divided and divisive, too permissive, too promiscuous to even approach the holistic living practice of divine intercourse. Yes, divine intercourse, no longer at war within one's own consciousness, no longer at war against divine order. That's right, within divine social, economic, family, community order, we are done with the battle of the sexes. In fact, it has never been a First Genesis tribe practice. The divine union of masculine and feminine energy is that natural and innate attraction and stimulation of he and she as two parts to one whole, coming together within those most sacred and intimate feelings of adoration and appreciation that he holds for the glory of she, and she in turn holds for the glory of he. A warm, sweet, touching, soothing, exciting, invigorating nature of energy, whole life energy, expressed within the structure and order of principles, morals, and values that support a seen and unseen network of living energy. This is not about theory or variations of individualistic spirituality or sexuality, or about overcoming duality or any other such self-deifying dilemmas. I am speaking from living experiences right now, in the flesh, elder-mated relationships, youthful mating relationships, brotherhood and sisterhood relationships, cultivating the soil, planting, making hips and weeding, eating raw and living fruits, vegetables, seeds, and nuts, fresh from the garden, sweating and playing and laughing, learning to respect each other, basketball, volleyball, tennis, all that kind of stuff, like taking a run in the sun, storytelling and singing to the babies when the day is done, sewing with skillful style, homeschooling, no fooling around, adorning and adoring our natural hair, dancing, drumming, building houses, thatch roof huts, making love and committed, lifelong, unified mate relationships of he and she, studying and preparing for the divine union of one that goes far beyond church and state declarations of marriage, making beautiful, joyful babies, natural childbirth, warm, affectionate kisses and touches, and words of encouragement, support, and appreciation, detoxing, purging, and healing every day, all day, as a way of life. And when delicate matters of indifference and emotional disturbances do flare, when things get too difficult to bear, there is the wisdom of a strong, matured eldership council, groomed for the occasion, balanced with strong brotherhood and sisterhood devotion to communal accountability. This is the holistic living nature of energy that the Kwatamani First Genesis tribe is working to re-encode here and now on a daily basis as the sacred ancestral parenting consciousness for the generation next within divine social, economic, family, community order. As it was in the beginning, so we work diligently to bring the beginning again. Look, listen, learn, discern, divine order or toxic reality, supreme truth or self-deified fallacy.
It's time for the feminine phenomena to be awoke. Got to reach her. She's the first teacher. In her womb is the first classroom.
And the nature that opposes humanity will continue into perpetuity unless a phenomena occurs.
The feminine phenomena, guided and protected by He who honors the feminine phenomena.